A very good morning to you and welcome to another edition of Captured by Women. My name is Abna Tebi and I'm here with my co-presenters Susan, Nanama and Priscilla. As usual, we are weighing in on topical issues that have made the headlines during the week, issues of national importance. So today on The Spin, we're looking at health issues and we'll be narrowing in on the reported cholera outbreak in the central region. Also, we will be looking at the deteriorating conditions in our psychiatric hospitals. Of course, we're looking at the conditions of service to their personnel working in such facilities and, of course, their health care of the inmates in these facilities. How are we working out our health agenda as we move forward as a nation? We'll also be looking at the EC, and you know, it's just barely about a month to the elections, and the Electoral Commission, the election management body, seems to be riddled with all sorts of suits. And now the latest we have is the EC itself calling on the East Supreme Court to review the decision by the Accra High Court, which sought to have the EC give the PPP presidential candidate the opportunity to amend his nomination forms. How are we working out these arrangements towards the December 7 polls? And then we will also look at the CPP manifesto, which was launched on Saturday, the 29th of October. What is different about the CPP manifesto that can help us on our development agenda as a nation? This manifesto is themed in Nkrumah's new covenant with the people, Apam Fufro. We will be interrogating these issues lined up for discussions on this morning's episode of Captured by Women. We'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we begin with The Spin. See you shortly.
Welcome back, lovely viewers. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Grand Rise Company Limited, for the wonderful packages they'll give us to give to our guest, and also to Tinated Tomac Mixture. Thank you. On The Spin today, we're discussing two health-related topics. First up, we have cholera outbreak in the central region, and gradually it's teaming up, coming to Tema. We've reported a few cases in the Tema area. We'll also discuss the psychiatric hospitals and the conditions of service provided to the health personnel, as well as the services rendered the inmates. Ladies, cholera outbreak. It's been a while, but it's very basic. It's known that cholera is a disease of poor sanitation and poor hygiene as it is. It's something that we get through eating people's fecal content as it is, really. Yeah. It has to be laid out as it is, because yes, it's very sad that as the nation develops, we have to be going back to things of poor sanitation and unhygienic conditions under which people sell food, under which people buy them, under which people prepare them, you know, and this is something that I think it's coming at a prime time where we can discuss it and find a permanent solution to it. Susan?
Well, a permanent solution is improving our water and sanitation. And you know how sanitation in this country is abysmal. It's, you know, people want to blame people's attitudes, but I think that there are laws that, you know, govern this country and laws that govern sanitation, and we must be up and doing, you know. When cholera breaks out, then you know that, you know, the country is not developed. I mean, you know that you are really down there in the depths. And we have it year in, year out. Last year we had higher figures than this. Hopefully the figures would not rise. The good thing about this year's, if I can say it's a good thing, is that there have been no deaths. You know, nobody has died, you know, and we hope that nobody, nobody will die. But it's a sad situation that, you know, our behaviors and practices, you know, have led us this path.
And so the failure of institutions.
Definitely, it's the failure of institutions, because people's attitudes will continually to be poor, you need to enforce the laws and punish people when people, step out of line, that and ensure that this doesn't happen, because it doesn't happen in civilized countries, So it just goes to show where we are on the civilization, what do you call it, ladder? Yes,
Civilization
civilization development ladder. It really is sad.
And to think that it's I mean, by default it would happen every year, so you pretty much look forward to cholera outbreak. I mean, sad as it is, that is the truth. It's something that happens all the time. And I think one good thing about this time, I mean, the fact that it's breaking out around this time, is the fact that, I mean, it's not the rainy season, because we know that in rainy seasons it gets to, I mean, like, the spread of it is facilitated by all the rain and everything like that. So now we don't have that. So we hope it will be curtailed and nipped in the bud before it gets out of hand.
It's that curtailing that I want us to understand. What was done last year? Because as Susan said, I think we even discussed cholera on this very show last year. So what was done? Who was monitoring the laid down procedures to ensure it does not reoccur? We've got to check and see the variance. Why has it happened again? Where was the lapse?
But who's in charge? We still have pan latrines.
Exactly. That's
Seriously,
what I was
we
going
still
to.
have pan latrines.
What was it part of the going forward agreement that we're going to try and get rid of pan latrines?
That
so
every
who was
house
responsible?
should have a toilet facility. I think that's part of a national agenda. It's not really to tackle cholera, but we know once that is dealt with, then the pan latrines will go out of the system.
Who was responsible to ensure that every house has a pan latrine?
Then maybe it will be the AMA has the assembly.
The assemblies. I mean,
would have
we need to building codes and permits. People are building houses without toilets. It doesn't make sense. So that must stop, and that falls under the local, the district assembly, the local government. Yes, and must ensure that. Of course, public toilets, and they have public toilets, but you must running water, places to wash your hands. Schools, we have schools that are built without toilets.
And some have it, but they are locked.
Okay.
And then you wonder why they have exactly those
What the point
exactly.
is.
I remember sometimes
the ability to maintain
no water supply, and
No
so
cleaners,
let's not
they are not
use
ready
it.
to
Go
hire
do free
cleaners.
range, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's keep it locked. So you just wonder what goes into the thought process of people.
I always say that when you enter a public institution and you go to their washrooms and their washrooms are dirty, it shows the level of that public institution and how they take care of the things that are supposed to be minor but are actually an important thing. You find all these huge houses, then there's a toilet tucked in somewhere as if it's an afterthought.
Exactly.
Oftentimes it really is.
Oftentimes it is.
Yeah.
How can a washroom be an afterthought? It doesn't make sense.
But moving forward, I mean, yes, the government, or the bigger picture is government has to put in certain things, or certain institutions have to work. But as individuals, what are we also doing? I feel the little we can do in our corners will be very important, like washing our hands well, making sure your food is warm before you eat, making sure you're buying from a hygienic area, that kind of thing.
Your food is hot.
People can't eat very hot food, but it should be hot or warm enough so that you don't scald your mouth. That's what I'm trying to say anyway. So we'll move on. I think we get the picture. We as individuals have to do what we have to do to get this cholera out of
Wash your
Ghana,
hands
and
with
then
soap and water.
It shouldn't just be
water.
running water.
In
The
fact, there
soap
needs to be
is
public
important.
education.
Yes, the
I mean,
education
there
has
needs
to
to be a
keep
lot of
going
public
on.
education.
Just a quick one. There was a study. The chips and the things that we buy off the street and the grapes and the things. The chips in itself in the package didn't have a lot of contamination.
But
the packaging,
People
those
so
guys are on the street all the time. Have you ever asked them where do you where do you go?
I think we don't want to know. You don't want to
you get it. You don't ask the person, so you buy it thinking that this one is not been exposed to flies, so but your hand touches it. You open the package and then you carry it and then you eat it, and you're eating feces. Feces all the way.
People, let's be careful. Anyways, we're moving on to the psychiatric hospitals. We've heard that the president said he was unaware of the fact that the psychiatric hospital has not received attention that it needs. Interesting.
He's the health minister.
I know.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, everybody.
When I first heard it, my jaw dropped.
I know.
I'm
trying to pick it up from the ground like
my jaw
morning.
dropped. But then he goes on to talk about that we haven't paid enough attention to it. And I'm like, well, you are the helm of affairs. So you should not be telling us that we have not paid attention to it. If you know that we need to pay attention to it, then you make sure you put somebody in charge of it and say, look, report to me because this is important.
Exactly.
Because if he is telling us that, being mentally disabled is not just those walking on the streets or those who are naked, but each one of us has a problem, then you should be worried.
More so when this story has been a running issue for the longest time. It's not just this week that is happening.
The ridiculousnly of it is that his Minister for Communication comes to say that, well, they were given 1.5 million, mental institutions, given 1.5 million. And so if they were going to be sharing it, 500,000 each. And yet we could brand 100 buses for 3.6 million.
Which shows where our priority is. Exactly. I mean, you obviously don't care about that.
I had one doctor speak on radio this morning, and he was saying it would cost, the budget for a year's maintenance or welfare of one psychiatric facility is 6 million, between 6 million and 7 million Ghana cedis. So spread it over the 12 months, you're talking about 500,000. So the 1.5 that was given to 3 was for a month. And we are how many months into the year already? We're in the 11th month.
And you see, and the nurses, this is where I'm very happy with them. They're not striking because they are salaries. Yeah. They're striking because they don't have the implements to work. Yeah, and that is in an extremely dangerous situation where you cannot...
that workers are
working without resources. You can't tell me anything more frustrating.
A special group of people whose, let me say, will be difficult to reason certain things out. They're sacrificing everything, and yet they don't even have the basic things they need to render the services.
I think the health minister should be called to book because he's really put the president in an embarrassing situation.
Totally.
Because the president was honest enough to say, hey, it's not come to his attention. Nobody has raised the red flag. So it means that the health minister
Prissy, I'd like to let you hold on that. We are okay. No, Prissy, we can't. Because this mental health issue, like Abna said, it's not a today matter. It's been since. We've been talking about it.
So the
president. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a minister who is in charge of health. And one would have thought that this would be at his heartbeat and who would debrief the president. He's not done this because I don't see how the president will say, I'm not aware of it. It means it really took him by surprise. Someone has not sensitized him that this is an issue that has to be looked at.
Which raises the question whether or not the president was being honest about it or he was just taken by surprise, because they're two different things, and I don't think it's a format.
But either way, it does not go well for our nation.
They have threatened to go on strike for a while now,
for the longest time,
and they had been complaining and complaining and complaining.
Because the institutions, it's in a deplorable state. You wouldn't want anyone to go there. You wouldn't want your sister who's a nurse to work under such situation.
Well, they're going to release 200 of them. Whether you like it or yes.
Exactly.
They're going to release 200
of them. About 300 or so onto the streets. Can you imagine?
Yes, they're going to send them home. Whether
the problem is sending them home. Well, the relatives never come for them. So you more or less are releasing them.
It's a matter of national security. What they are saying is they are going to unleash them. This is not release. They are going to unleash them.
No, of course they will make an assessment of those who
are fairly
stable. And
that is if the people to make
that assessment. Fairly stable is relative.
It doesn't solve the problem because you still have the most dangerous on the wards, still putting into the lives of the health workers in danger. And they can scratch. Generally hospitals have hepatitis B as a norm, you know, and most health workers are supposed to be injected against hepatitis B. It will not surprise me if the nurses working in the mental hospital have not been injected against hepatitis B. Can you imagine somebody just scratches you, just a tiny scratch? That is it. Because hepatitis B is one of the most, it's even more infectious than HIV/AIDS. Yes. You get it. And scratches you, that's it. You're done for. And they will come into contact with these people closely.
And these people get more agitated,
and they get more agitated
without they themselves are going through difficult times in their lives. They haven't eaten. They are in. It's just exactly, you know. So it's a very serious situation.
It's like I said, a national security issue. It's something that we all must be concerned, and it should not be something we've said and put to the back burner. Because look, if I'm on the traffic light and he comes and he throws a stone and I'm startled, I could easily run into those hawkers on the road, or run into another car, and that you know. So it's not something that we should take lightly at all.
But as a people, really, we never give mental health issues the attention it deserves, because again, you realize there are a number of if you like, renovations or refurbishments being given to certain hospitals. You go into it and you realize that nothing about mental health has been incorporated into those refurbishments. So then it gives you
or decreasing in terms of numbers. Do we
well, I mean, we are living in a very stressful world, and I can only imagine that those mental health issues will be.
They said that 1 in 4. So of the 3 of the 4 of us sitting here, you know, maybe Nanama or somebody or Abna.
I know all of us are looking at you.
So 1 in 4, I mean, seriously, has a mental problem, and I think that our culture in the past has stigmatized it so much, you know, that we don't talk about it. We try to hide it and push it there like it will go away, but that is not the case. It won't go away, and because of the stigmatization, that's why when they send them back home, they refuse to accept them. But if we realize that there are so many of us who seemingly live a normal life, you know, and we seemingly go about our things, but there is a problem. We can function, you know, but we have problems. And we ought to realize that.
When the president gave that response, I mean, it's something we say all the time. I mean, there's a thin line between sanity and... These are people who are actually insane. They are institutionalized. We are talking about solving that problem. So as much as possible, you know, we would want to keep the issues, you know, in perspective. They need the resources. The people taking care of them must be, you know, well taken care of. There must be infrastructure in place and all of that. So perhaps he said that to dilute the conversation and all of that. But seriously,
my problem currently is, I mean, we heard Dr. Priscilla saying that in the elections, I mean, many people could tip more into the mental health disorder. So we should look at it, because maybe one of them will be the ones who needs that hospital, and you wouldn't want to go and be in the situation.
No, I think they say it, but they really don't relate to it.
It's high time they start.
They don't relate to
That's
it.
what I'm drawing
relate to it, that it can be your future place of abode.
Yes, you do something about it. Because even the VIP ward in that place is nothing to write home about. You get it?
VIP. Insane people. I mean, we have levels.
I wish you wouldn't use insane.
Yes, careful
because they say it's not really politically correct. But
what do we say?
Mental disorder or disability or their illness. It's an illness. Just like how hypertension, you know, diabetes, cancer, etc. It's an illness. You know, and it's no fault of theirs. And it could happen, like we said, it could happen to anybody. You could just snap, or you haven't snapped. You are there, you are functioning, but
you
have
need to cross the line of sanity before they. You know, because a lot of people have mental issues, but necessarily. They're still quite.
When you're not able, when it goes beyond your control,
exactly,
and when you lack insight into what's happening, I guess that's where
there are many fantastic people who are bipolar. and so they haven't snapped. They're left.
It's a wide spectrum.
So it's a wide spectrum.
I guess we're drumming home the information that something has to be done now. It's not.
I think so. I think that there ought to be more of an uproar. There ought to be a lot more anger against it, and we as a people, yes, to take hold of the authorities, but also do the introspection that how do we treat them? How do we want to be treated if we were in that position? And then demand for better services for them.
Right. Great. So that's been it on the health segment. We've been talking about mental disorders, the infrastructure in place to cater to persons who suffer this ailment. And we also talked about cholera. We will take a quick break from our sponsors. Tinted Tomac, tomato paste with no size. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back, lovely viewers. So on Big Bang 1, we're looking at the launch of the CPP manifesto. Of course, we are in the last quarter of our election year, and so it's in order that we spend time looking at the political atmosphere. Joining us to discuss what the manifesto contains and what the CPP aims to do should they be given the reins of power to govern us for the next 4 years is Mr. Jamal Tonzwa, a member of the CPP manifesto committee. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Great. It's a privilege to have you join us to delve into the issues. Of course, we can safely say without the PPP, referencing last 4 years elections, that you are the second largest opposition currently running for the seat of the presidency. So you launched your manifesto somewhere last week. We want to understand what the CPP is saying. What are the key or the salient points of the manifesto? What are you hoping to do should you be given the reins of power come this elections?
Good morning to your viewers. Now, the Convention People's Party, as our legal environment permits for a multi-party democracy, is one of the actors in our political domain. And so, pursuant to Article 55 of the Constitution, political parties are free to shape the political will of people and to disseminate political ideas. And so it has come out with the manifesto for the 2016 elections. Now, the point to be made here is that the manifesto, which is called Apam Fufro, Nkrumah's New Covenant with Ghanaians, it's a manifesto that is a people's manifesto. It's an all-inclusive manifesto. So all that it reflects is what the aspirations of Ghanaians are, what their hopes are as far as our national lives
what are your is
concerned.
What are your key focuses?
Well, the CPP promises to offer a responsive government, right? At the heart of it all, leadership is what all this is about. And you would note that we operate a system in which we believe that power emanates from the people and it will be vested in a sovereign, which will be the government, and the government should be a good political leader. So
what are some of the things you have identified that people are seeking to be addressed that you're responding to within your manifesto?
Within the manifesto, sustainable development. We want to see an environment that people would be free in terms of how they would go about their lives. So security is important. People would also want to see an advancement in their economic lives as well. And this is what the CPP addresses in this manifesto.
In addition to providing more schools and putting more children in schools, we are also going to look at the type of education that the children are going to get. Okay, that is important. That is really central. So we will do the schools, all right. We will do the teacher training, all right. But we will focus on the kind of education that the teacher is getting, that the teacher will impart to the children. So that is very important. You want people that come out of school. For us, basic education is up to secondary, so they finish at 18. You want children who come out at 18 to have enough skills to be able to sustain their own life, to contribute to their community.
Sure, so I think Susan is talking about the skill, the human resource who would actually impact. So, Mr. Jamal, would you then say that indeed you have to wait for NDC to finish another 4 years because they are putting in the infrastructure for which you seek to provide the human resource? And also, I think somewhere in your manifesto you talk about the supply of ambulances and all that. So I see that you are really taking care of the very latter end. So perhaps you still wait for NDC to finish putting up more hospitals, then you can come the next 4 years and, you know, make sure you have the ambulances and all of that?
Well, not at all. Now, we have had education being one of the major points that political parties and politicians would campaign on to solicit votes from Ghanaians. Now, what the CPP believes in is that we are going to look at a government which would tackle education not in a nominal sense, that we're saying that, okay, let's prioritize education, but when we look at what should go into quality education, then we're looking at free, compulsory, universal basic education. We're also looking at secondary education, which should be progressively free. Yeah, so and when we say free, and we talk about these things, we will be guided by General Comment 13 of ECOSOC. Now, free does not necessarily speak to the issue of cost, but we're looking at quality as well.
And that's where I want to come in, because I heard a very disturbing statistic this morning that I can't remember exactly the figure, but quite a significant percentage of the youth who, quote unquote, have been to school, at least to the JHS level, are illiterate. They can't read or write, which is quite serious.
So you're wondering what did they pass?
Exactly. So then the quality of education is taken to a whole new level. If you have such a it's so unfortunate I can't remember the figure exactly, but it was quite significant.
But that is why I spoke of functional illiterates. That so you have children who have come out of school but can barely read or write.
Yes, so it goes to access. Yes, you have access to the education, but what about the quality?
Yeah, that's what I said. So it's not just looking at building more schools, but looking at the quality of education that comes out. And so you start with the teacher, because it's the teacher that is going to impart knowledge. So we would look at the kind of curriculum that is in our teacher training institutions and the kind of things that our teachers would need to impart to our young people, so that if they come out at 18, they have the skills to be beneficial to their community and to themselves, and not to be a burden. So we don't want people to come out after SSS and can barely write a sentence. So that is important to us. And I mean, look, we've had a history in this country where our education was par excellence. You could go anywhere and you'd be accepted. What did we do? We diluted it along the road, and this is where we've come, where if you go somewhere, you probably have to write all sorts of exams before you are even accepted to, into their schools.
Generally, we should have some independent state institutions. And independence would not mean that we would only state in our constitution that they should be free from governmental control and influence. But what that should mean is that we should as well have these institutions have funding mechanisms which should be such that they would not be vulnerable to the wishes of the executive and politicians. So that the CPP proposes to have an independent constitutional bodies fund from which institutions, state institutions which must be independent, would derive their, funds for their operations. Now, besides that, you would also have certain appointments made in respect of the composition of those independent institutions to be such that you would not only have a provision under the Constitution which say that the president appoints this person.
So you have some sort of constitutional review?
Indeed.
Okay.
I mean, the review has been made. It's about implementation. And in the manifesto under good governance, you'd realize that we've said that under Chapter 25, you would find that we have two mechanisms for constitutional amendments. We have the ordinary amendment process, which would take the form of the legislative process. You enact an act of parliament for such a purpose. But for provisions that are identified under Article 290 as entrenched provisions, we have a more elaborate mechanism which would require notification to Ghanaians for at least 6 months, and then Parliament considers it, it goes through the motions, then we subject it to a referendum.
Yes, but to pick up from there, currently there's a government white paper on the CRC report. Are you going to take it wholesome and move with it, or you are going to seek to make some amendments of some sort to it, or perhaps scrap it totally?
With such a very important national, venture, we would want to look at it critically.
The reason why I'm asking is because you talk in your manifesto at page 36, devolution of power and increasing social accountability. You're talking about the fact that you would want to amend the 1992 Constitution to allow for popular election of all metropolitan MMDCs.
Yes.
But clearly the government white paper, as it is now, doesn't make room for that.
But the people of
Ghana want it. But
but we
asking,
don't need to go to that white paper.
That's why I'm asking. So I need to know
what the people of Ghana want, because what the people of Ghana want is really devolution to the lowest level. Okay, they want to elect their own DCs and their own MCs. That is what they want. Not what the white paper came. The white paper came. It says we'll pick 3, 5, vote, do this. I think that can be put as yes, definitely. I mean, you're going to scrap the white paper and then move.
That's CPP on the Constitution, CPP on education. How about jobs? I think that's something Ghanaians crave for as well. How do you intend to respond to the job situation currently?
With respect to jobs, there should be some necessary restructuring in respect, or let's look at it this way to start with, that we should look at persons who have had training and education but are unemployed, and we should look at unemployment generally. That with respect to the so-called unemployed graduates and unemployed educated persons, there must be some necessary restructuring to ensure that our educational system and our programs would meet the requirements of industry. And there should also be this, interface between industry and academia to ensure that, we don't have this problem, which we can do away with.
But education is really not the only source of recruitment. There are so many
other
things. Even Greenpeace does speak to the fact of the Almond project, where you employ some people. One person is tasked to develop an acre of land and produce. That's also a forum.
So I had only addressed one aspect of it, the graduate unemployment bit. But for the general population, I mean, it's a known fact. It's in terms of what Abina would say, it is trite that agriculture is the main occupation, the mainstay of this economy. And so a responsive government must really address job creation through agriculture.
When it comes to employment, what is the distinct thing CPP is going to do that is in response to the unemployment situation?
Well,
so if you talk about agriculture, I don't think it's something new because it's
he's already said about agric. Okay, we are going to use agric to industrialize.
Okay,
you are going to get from agric a lot of your natural products which you will use and then you give value to. You are coming from a certain ideological base, and that ideological base is what will inform the actions that you do. And then they would look at your record in what you have done when you have had the opportunity to govern. And we say that from our ideological base, we believe that social justice, we believe in self-determination, and then we believe in Pan-Africanism.
We're talking about job creation, and we know that, when it comes to job creation, the private sector plays a key role. And for the private sector to thrive, you need what you would typically call an enabling environment. And here you're looking at economic indicators, you're looking at interest rates, among other things. We've had the NPP say they're going to reduce taxes, not across the board, but specific taxes, perhaps on import duties and raw materials and other things like that. What is the CPP's way of perhaps making sure that private sector booms so that we have the job creation that we anticipate or we are looking forward to?
Private sector and job creation. Now, the CPP intends to run an all-inclusive government and to ensure that all stakeholders would have a very friendly environment within which to go about their activities, including business enterprises. Now, there is this program ongoing with, it's called Engine Program, funded by DFID. Then we have TechnoServe Ghana piloting it. And I have consulted on this before, and one of the things we intend to do is this, that we are going to adopt the model that Engine is piloting. And what it is doing is basically this. It is looking out for ideas from young persons, from ambitious persons, whether they are startups or they are people who have just ideas to start with. Now, we'll give them all the business support services, you know, shorten the bureaucracy, the red tape involved when you want to establish a business.
This
now,
is
the way
Engine did, right?
Indeed.
Engine. So, in fact, our viewers can just look up Engine.
Engine, yeah.
And try and find out
Engine
the
is the name of the
modalities-
project.
Sure,
Yes,
the
Engine.
modalities of how Engine has worked. CPP wants to use the Engine modalities as well to give relief to the private sector, which plays a significant role in our nation's development. In fact, we thank Mr. Jamal.
But the disclaimer must be that I'm not marketing Engine.
Okay.
No, it's all right.
Right?
No, I'm just saying that
Because I don't
because
have
of
the license to
time,
do
we are
that.
unable to let you go into the Engine modalities.
All right, so
I'm just referring them to the
so
fact that you
business
might
advisory
use the
services
similar.
will be given to all persons who have ideas and would want to run them.
It's unfortunate
And
we are
then,
out of time. We have something from Leap for you. Leap tomato paste. Tomato paste with no size. Your jollof will be fantastic. That's all I can say. So thank you, Mr. Jamal Tonswa. That has been a member of the CPP manifesto, discussing with us the details of the CPP manifesto and why you should give them their, your vote coming to December 2016 election. Stay tuned, viewers. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Last week, Dr. Kwesi Indum received a verdict from the High Court asking the EC to allow him to correct his mistakes. Earlier this week, Mrs. Osei headed back to the Supreme Court asking for clarity on the law of nominations and to quash the High Court ruling. So people are worried. We have 32 days to elections, and people believe that if we go on the way we are, the elections will probably not come on the 7th of December. Ladies, what are your opinions?
It's a very interesting. I mean, we thought we were out of the woods when we got the verdict in respect of Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum's High Court decision, which basically said allow Dr. Papa Kwesi to amend, and then this comes in. But anyways, we understand the resource person, Mr. Loyopon, is on there. I said Mr. Loyopon. Loyopon is on the line, and we would be speaking to him. Hello. Good morning, Mr. Opon, and welcome to Captured by Women.
Yes, good to be here.
Great. So we are looking at the never-ending litigation as we proceed to the elections, and what we have latest is the EC's application to the Supreme Court for a review of the decision by the High Court in respect of Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum's challenge vis-a-vis his disqualifications. Could you tell us exactly what this application is seeking to do and to what length?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, from what I have seen, I think without sounding too legalistic, I would say that generally the applicant, that is the EC or Mrs. Charlotte Osei, is praying the court, the Supreme Court, to make some declaration, and one that for me, I think stands out is that the High Court judge may have exceeded the jurisdiction when the court ordered that the EC must afford the applicants, that is purposing the opportunity to amend or alter whatever errors or problems that may have been identified from the documents he presented. And so they took one, wrongful assumption of jurisdiction by the High Court, 2, excess of jurisdiction, and 3, error of law on the face of the record. In summary, they're saying that the court may have had, one, the court did not have jurisdiction to entertain the matter, but in their view, the applicant should have filed a petition consistent with the 394 and not by an application for judicial review. And then they said that even if the court had jurisdiction, the court exceeded it. And thirdly, that when the court said that the EC had not established a nomination period, they're saying that the court was wrong because the EC, the applicant, the prosecution had actually indicated in the papers that they filed that there had actually been the nomination period fixed by the EC. So these are the relief that the applicants are now seeking from the Supreme Court.
Very well. We know that there's a pending matter and we wouldn't want to go into the merits of it, but generally speaking, so many suits coming up against the EC and we are barely a month away to the December 7 polls. Should we be worried?
Well, yes or no, but let me look at the no first. The no is that, for me, I think that it is better for us that when we disagree on a matter of law or even on a matter of fact, which can only be resolved by the application of law, the best procedure we have chosen for ourselves is to go to a court of law, where the law permits, go to arbitration, so that we can get finality on these matters by a third person, an arbiter, who is expected to be a disinterested party. So for me, that is better than resorting to ammunition and guns, the old way of resolving issues, that is combat. That is so, that for me, that is okay. The issue of the time in of the essence and the fact that we are limited time, my view is that yes, these matters may not have occurred now if the EC had appropriately commenced these processes earlier than it had done. Of course, they are also saying they had some challenges. So I think moving forward, we may have to put our processes together. Some of them, including registration of voters and verification, could be done even a year before the time. If that had been done, else we wouldn't have had any worry as to whether or not we would even be able to make it on the 7th of December, without which I hold the view that we cannot even hold the election unless the Constitution is amended.
Mr. Okon, so you do say that indeed we have decided to use the court as the arbiter when we have such issues. Are we saying, or do we deduce from what's happening that the current administration wish to carry the regulations and the rules governing our elections to the letter? Because those same rules have not been followed through and through. Looking at the political parties' laws, where initially she did indicate that she wanted to ensure that everybody was in line and all of that. So why does it appear as though suddenly the rules and regulations is being, you know, carried through to the letter, or someone is seeking to carry through the rules and regulations to the letter, where in the same vein, those same rules and regulations have not been carried through to the letter?
Well, thank you, but I have a different view, unfortunately. My view is that the fact that someone had not complied with rules previously will not subsequently disable her or him from complying with the rules. Don't forget that in CI 94, which Parliament has passed, there is a provision in it that if the EC doesn't comply with the rules in CI 94, an EC official who fails to do so can be the subject of a criminal proceeding and can even suffer the payment of a fine, imprisonment, or both. So I think, I don't speak for them, but I think that could be also one of the reasons why moving forward, they appear to be quite more vigorous than they have been in the past to enforce these laws. Unless someone else may prove that they are afflicted by malice and that they are not enforcing laws in good faith, then that will take it from the realm of genuineness or propriety to something else. But as I stand here now, I can only imagine that they may have been more vigorous now because there is a punishment attached to their own failure to enforce the law.
Yes, sir, but citing issues of criminality, I mean, for the EC to determine that indeed it's not just normal anomalies, but of course there's been forgery of signatories and all of that. I mean, is the EC in any way insinuating that the person of Papa Kwesi Nduom is trying to perpetrate some crime, and does that not warrant that he's heard in the first place on the grounds that some criminality is being purported here, just on the basis of some forged signatory, which I am sure the candidates would not be privy to the documents based on which the EC made a reference and came to the conclusion that their signatories were forged?
I understand the sentiment, and I think you are only reiterating the sentiments expressed by people, genuine as they may be.
Yes, we represent people. We are the media, so we represent the thoughts of people.
I hold the view that it may not be appropriate now, respectfully, to personalize the issues. The issue of criminality, I understand, has been referred to the appropriate state institution. What we are left with is whether or not any error can be corrected within the stipulated nomination period. And I think that matter may be clarified by the court, at least on Papa Kwesi Nduom's case, or the case that the EC has brought before the Supreme Court. So, as to whether or not he is an accomplice, or whether or not what the person who nominated him constituted a criminal offense, I think at this stage, that hasn't been brought before any court of law. The issue is whether or not the EC is entitled to reject any nomination papers on the basis that the person has peddled falsehood or has engaged in fraud in their view or fraudulent acts. And I think that matter may be clarified after the Supreme Court has heard the Papa Kwesi Nduom case. This is not about the merits at this stage. It is only about the procedure.
The procedural impropriety that was alleged.
Yes. Was taken. Yeah.
Mr. Opon, sorry to take you back, but concerning the matter of jurisdiction, saying that the High Court has exceeded or has not worked within its jurisdiction, I need a little clarification, because I'm assuming that the justices of the High Court do know their limits and they know within which jurisdiction to work. But to take the matter and sit on it and actually come out with a verdict, only to be told that you're in excess of your jurisdiction, how does this augur for our court system? In election petition.
With all due respect, even at the level of the Superior Court, even the Court of Appeal or the High Court, or the Supreme Court, I mean, if you take the presidential election case, a matter of what is the effect of the word or the consequence of the word shall, it is clearly divided their lawsuits. I mean, that is the nature of the law. So the fact that somebody alleges that a court lacked jurisdiction or a court exceeded the jurisdiction when it entertained a matter does not necessarily mean that that person is better versed in law than, let's say, the court. And I don't want to personalize it in terms of the judge. But matters have been determined at the High Court. Court of Appeal has set aside only for the Supreme Court to affirm that the High Court was right. Sometimes the Supreme Court will affirm that rather the Court of Appeal was right and not the High Court. There have been instances where even a magistrate court judgment has been affirmed by the Supreme Court to be of a better view position of the law than even a Court of Appeal or a High Court that had the appeal. Yeah. So these are matters of law, and we will have to live with it, except that once you get to the Supreme Court, there could be finality. Remember that Lord Denning is reported to have said that if there was a court higher than the House of Lords, that court would have also set aside some of the decisions of the House of Lords. That is the nature of the law, except that when the Supreme Court speaks, that is final.
Very well, Mr. Opon, just before you go, if you could kindly tell us this, what does this pending application before the Supreme Court mean for the cases involving PNC, NDP, and GCPP? Because they pretty much are along the same lines.
Well, from what I have seen in terms of the processes filed, it is not a general rate which is seeking for interpretation or enforcement of the provision of the Constitution. So perhaps a pronouncement on this matter by the Supreme Court may be only personal, if you like, really, or practically related to this case alone. But I think a lower court like the High Court, in terms of the High Court being lower than the Supreme Court, can take a cue from it and say that if the Supreme Court says in a similar case, which I cannot distinguish, that this is the situation and this is the law, then I think that the High Court judges will be compelled or will be inclined to apply the Supreme Court's ratio or the decision in the hypocrisy in James case. It may not necessarily mean that a declaration or a granting or refusal of the processes before the Supreme Court may not necessarily have any adverse or positive impact on the cases pending before the High Court. But I'm saying that when the Supreme Court speaks on the matter of law, even if you can distinguish, there is still the opportunity to feel compelled or to feel obliged or inclined.
Very well.
To also apply it.
Great. Mr. Opon, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to end it here. This is all the time we have for this segment. But thank you so much for your time and your insights. So that was Mr. Yaw Opon, a legal practitioner, shedding some light on the pending application before the Supreme Court in respect of the EC's review of the High Court decision involving Dr. Papa Kwesi Indom. And that's it for us on the show today. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. My name is Abnate B, and I've done this with Priscilla, Nanama, and Susan. We'll be back your way, same time, same place next week. Until then,